Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearing begins with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you're attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Crystal. Good evening, everybody. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances and appeals, and recommendations to city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. That's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize the consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, the item is placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, and neighborhood association presentations, and then followed by public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer.
Here.
Squires. Here. Blanchard.
Here.
Moore. Here. Gillespie. Finfrock. Stanley.
Here.
Mooney.
Here.
Seha.
Here.
7 present, 2 absent.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a handful of items on our agenda tonight. We have one deferral, which we'll take up first. And that's item number 4. This is CVA 23-28 Ethos Design and Remodel LLC. The project address is 5115 West Ponder Street. A variance to encroach the side setback on 0.22 acres in R1C zone. This item is being considered for deferral to April 1st. Is there anyone in attendance tonight hoping to testify in opposition to this item? And you cannot attend the meeting on April 1st. Okay, very good. Will the clerk, at this point, I'll entertain a motion. Sorry, getting ahead of myself.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Danley.
I make a motion that item number 4, CVA 23-28 Ethos Design and Remodel LLC, a variance request located at 5115 West Ponder Street, be deferred to April 1st Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Second.
Great, thank you. I have a motion to defer by Commissioner Danley with a second by Commissioner Squires. Any further discussion? All right, will the clerk please call the roll, please?
Schaefer.
Yes.
Squires. Aye. Blanchard.
Yes.
Moore. Yes. Stanley.
All right.
Mooney.
Aye.
Seha.
Aye.
All in favor. Motion carries.
All right, thank you. And I believe we have one item on our agenda eligible for the consent agenda tonight. That is item number 3, which is SOS 23-27, Rodney Evans and Partners LLC at 2915 North Tamarack Drive. A waiver to the subdivision ordinance requirement to construct curb, gutter, and sidewalk as part of a minor land division on 0.46 acres in R1C zone. See, the applicant is present. And Ben, are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Very good. The applicant is in agreement with the staff report. Is there anybody in attendance this evening hoping to testify in opposition to this item? Very good. And it looks like we have no one online tonight. Is that right, Crystal? Okay. All right. At this time, I'll entertain a motion regarding item number 3 and the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Danley.
I make a motion that item number 3, SOS 23-27, Rodney Evans and Partners, a waiver to the subdivision ordinance located at 2915 North Tamarack Drive, be placed in the consent agenda with its respective staff report. Its terms and
Second.
conditions in the staff report.
Second.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Squires, for the second. Any further discussion regarding consent? Okay. Will the clerk please call a roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Danley,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
Seha.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, very good. Okay, we'll return back to the top of our agenda. That leaves us with 3 items to hear tonight. Up first is item number 1, SUB 23-63, Fire Rail Subdivision. Address is 4600 South Apple Street. A preliminary plat for an industrial subdivision comprised of 11 buildable lots and 1 common lot on 36.74 acres in an M1D zone. First, we're going to hear from staff, Jesse Lau.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, good evening. The item before you is SUB 23-63. This is a preliminary plat for 1 common and 10 buildable lots located at 4600 Apple Street on approximately 36.74 acres in an M1D zone. The original application was for 13 buildable lots. However, the applicant has reduced this to 10 lots as reflected in the late correspondence memo. The applicant is proposing to keep the existing uses and add existing lots to the site. The proposal maintains the existing access point onto Apple Street and constructs Fire Rail Street as a private gated road. While private streets are usually discouraged, there's no potential for cross-access or street extension to the north or east due to the railroad and to the south due to the quarry. ACHD has also conditioned this to be a private street. 1 condition of approval will require the installation of sidewalk along the entire length of the private road. The applicant is opposed to this condition, which is why we're hearing this application this evening. While the subdivision design standards do not require curb gutter or sidewalk for private roads and industrial developments, this can be required by City Council, and the comprehensive plan does encourage greater pedestrian connectivity throughout the city. Additionally, any subsequent development will require sidewalks through a design review approval. Sidewalks are included as that condition of approval for the subdivision in order to develop a cohesive pedestrian network rather than a piece-by-piece network during subsequent review applications. As conditioned, the proposal meets all of the requirements of the development code. And in conclusion, the planning team recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. You can start with your name and address for the record, please. And we'll 10 minutes do it.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Mhm.
Name is Connor Lindstrom, KM Engineering, 5725 North Discovery Way, Boise, Idaho, 83713. I'd like to thank Jessie first off for her presentation. I think she summed it up overall, but I'm just going to dive in a little further, give you a little more context. So as you can see, Fire Rail Subdivision is what's proposed. I'm with KM Engineering, a planner with them, and we're working on entitlements, surveying, engineering. So, this is their vicinity map. I'm not going to go too into the weeds here. Jesse talked about it briefly, but this is an industrial area. You have adjacent industrial uses, heavy and light. Then you have the quarry to the south there. This is also a unique property where we have the railroad going through or along the northern boundary of the property. So it provides, that railroad connection for this property and future industrial users. We believe that this will be a seamless transition for the area. It's industrial in the future land use map. We're not changing the zoning or anything like that. Just dividing the property to provide future industrial users to locate on those lots there. As you can see, lot 10 is much larger. It's just over 20 acres. That'll encompass existing, it's a fire truck manufacturer that operates on the property, BME fire trucks, and they manufacture those on site. Those existing buildings will remain within lot number 10. There are two buildings to the north, more along the northern part of the property. Those will be within their own lots as well. So we have a private road that's going to go through. If I go back here, private road will go through, provide frontage and access for each of the lots. And like Jesse said, we did have originally 13 lots, but to get rid of any cross-access issues, we just combined some of those lots to the south into that larger lot 10 there. Yeah, I'd like to go into the condition that Jesse mentioned about sidewalks. You can see here, condition number 2, it says applicant shall install a minimum of 5-foot wide sidewalks the length of the private road. I'd like to first start by just stating the code here, and I think Jesse mentioned it in her staff report, but it says that subdivision design standards do not require curb, gutter, and sidewalks for industrial developments unless required by City Council. These are some pictures from the site. You can see the private street entrance there off of Apple Street. There are no current sidewalks along Apple Street. Amity is also close by. No sidewalks along there. And then this is also going to be a gated subdivision, and industrial subdivision too. So we don't foresee many pedestrian, traffic going through this area, or really connecting to anywhere else, because this is not within ACHD's integrated 5-year work plan or within their CIP to require sidewalks along Apple Street. The nearest sidewalk, as the crow flies, is just over 1,000 feet away along Federal Way there. So like I mentioned, not much room for connectivity. Another thing to mention, and I know Jesse touched on this, is, as future users come forward, they'll be under the new code. So design review would most likely require improvements at that time. We don't want to have to put in the sidewalk now, and then as those future users come in, depending on if they buy 1 lot or 2 lots, they could just have to rip out sidewalk to put in a new curb cut if it doesn't align with their use and what their needs are. We also have the rail line that goes through there. So depending on how that rail line touches their property, they could have to, kind of recreate, the site for their needs, just specific to what those industrial uses could be. And like I said, they will require approvals at that time. But yeah, we like to specifically request that condition of approval be removed. Other than that, we don't have any other concerns at this time. And I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lindstrom. Appreciate that. First, we'll check in to see if anyone from the Southeast Neighborhood Association is present. I don't think Mr. Berg is with us. Crystal, still no one online? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions then by the commission.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Daly.
I have a line of questioning, if I may. Mr. Lindstrom, so let me start with this. So this is a proposed 2,000-foot, roughly, long street, right? And this can be a question for staff as well. It looks to me like, according to the set plans here, that it's a 40-foot, just about curb to curb, curb face to curb face, give or take. And it looks to me like the existing street section that's there is a tad bit wider. Can we confirm at the very least that it's a 40-foot wide face to face?
Yeah, so it looks like the actual easement. Let me see here.
I'm looking at the bottom left hand
Yeah,
picture.
so 44 feet wide. Looks like 25 to center line from the cut. That wouldn't be right. It's 46. 22. So yeah, 22 and 22. And you're talking about the existing access point onto Apple Street. How wide is that currently?
I want to make sure first and foremost that the extension of the existing road, that's the bulk of the distance here.
Oh, gotcha.
From face to face of the curb, looks to me, it's about 40 feet. I think that's, can we agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay. My question to you then, Mr. Lindstrom, is that you don't have, there's nothing that's, I don't believe there's no road there that's there now. So you don't know exactly what type of vehicles are going to be going in and out of there, but it is industrial in use. Do you have any sense of the dimensions or the size of the biggest couple of rigs that might go through there?
Oh, thanks, Commissioner. Great question.
Anything that's not typical of our street or would need some sort of additional?
You know, I can't say for certain.
There's a gravel company up the street that has the semis going up and down, and nobody would be bigger than a semi.
Okay, so something that's already street legal, something that's
Yeah.
already typical and common. So if I have 40 feet, do you have any intentions for on-street parking?
No, sir.
Okay, so with 40 feet of width and typical commercial/freight types of vehicles, if I were to take 10 feet of that 40 and continue to maintain 30 feet for a 2-lane road, and that 10 feet be constructed as a 2-directional sort of side path, as opposed to curb gutter sidewalk on both sides, would you be amenable to that?
Commissioner Danley, I'm not going to speak for the property owner, but I think that the main concern for the sidewalk was definitely the cost and the concern of having to just rip it out to put it maybe back in the future. So having some sort of bike path there, if that's what you're talking about, maybe not having to build anything, but having a dedicated area through there for.
The only construction would consist of a curbing.
Okay.
So you build your 40 feet of asphalt, you'd still have the curbs on both sides.
Yeah.
But an extruded curb, an additional extruded curb that would physically give some degree of separation between the vehicles that are traveling 2-direction and this slice of asphalt 10 feet or so that allows walkers and bicyclists to potentially use it. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I'm not going to speak on your behalf. Do you have any?
Before we have any more,
Yeah.
we need to get him on the record. So, just because there are people watching online at home.
That's
So,
fair.
yeah. So if you can come
Yeah,
on up,
that's
please,
fair.
and give us your name and address. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Chad Moffett. My address is 5858 North Yakina Headway in Boise, Idaho. The thing that I guess I'm trying to understand is, so it's an industrial zone. So we really honestly do not want people walking up and down the street when there's trucks going by. The whole facility is mainly paved already. There are specific walkways that are designated that, we take care of so that people can walk in a safe zone that are going to and from the plant. So walking up and down the road, it's not public. We don't want people in there. There's metal, there's steel, there's other structures laying around. That the last thing we need is people walking around or riding bikes around. A lot of these trucks, I mean, to be honest with you, there are times you can flatten a tire because of the material that's in there. So the gate will be closed. There will not be access 24 hours a day. Matter of fact, during the day, there's security there from 4 a.m. till about 6 p.m. every day. So we really don't want pedestrians on site because of the dangers that it could pose to them walking in and out of our facility. I really would not want a bicyclist in there because somebody would get hurt. I mean, you're talking fire trucks going in and out, your semis that could go in and out. You have trains that will come in and out on the far side of the property. So the last thing we want really is people walking up and down or bicyclists going through the facility.
Mr. Chair, if I may, one last question.
Yeah, please go ahead, Chris.
This can be to either of you. You are planning on subdividing this lot, and you acknowledged in your testimony that there could be applicants in the future. You don't know who they are. Is it conceivable that they could employ local employees who live in proximity to this site? And particularly the 1,013 feet you just cited that's from the Federal Way bike path?
I mean, Commissioner Danley, yeah, I mean, I would be silly to say no. It is possible, but like Chad was saying here, I mean, it's a gated subdivision. You know, there's currently no connectivity opportunities along Apple. So, I mean, I guess if you could ride your bike anywhere or walk anywhere, but that's not really the intention, I think, for ACHD and for this area being an industrial zone area with industrial aspirations in the future land use map. I just don't see that aligning with connectivity to this property. And
For employees too, I'm not talking about the general public. I'm talking about prospective people who could work on this site, on the 13 different lots, or however many total we end up with. That's where I'm getting at.
I will say that, you know, the two units that are on the north side, both of those park in front of their units. So, I mean, I would highly doubt that most of these employees back to these back areas are going to walk the half a mile back there. And so most of this will have their own parking back in there. There will be a security guard that lets them in and out, the vehicles in and out, and make sure they stay on the designated road. But the amount of people that walking would go to the other facilities on the far side, and they're going to use the current walking paths or pavement that's there. So I'm not saying there wouldn't be people walking along it. I would say it would be a rarity. I mean, right now, the two companies that do rent from us, none of them walk. I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of the new thing, is driving. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Thanks, Chris.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mooney?
Yeah, question for staff then regarding the applicant's discussion about connectivity on Apple. What's the applicant, Connor mentioned ACHD not requiring sidewalks out there, but that's contrary to the city's position. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the city does just generally require sidewalks in almost every application, including industrial developments. And as the land use authority, we have the ability to do that. In any future application, sidewalks would be required with a design review approval. And ACHD does, you know, comment on sidewalks, but it is not necessarily in their purview.
Mr. Chair, follow.
Please, John.
So Jesse, you said that sidewalks will generally be conditioned by the city for even in an industrial area, despite the code that we've quoted here, where it seems to be a city council option. So can you explain that a little bit more?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. That specific section of code refers to specifically private industrial roads. Any public road in an industrial area would be required to meet all of our sidewalk requirements as the city. So the city council specific would be for a private industrial road. However, any future application on any of these parcels would require design review approval, and design review standards do require sidewalks.
Mr. Chair.
Please, John.
So the applicant's discussion about, obviously, their private interior yard there has got safety issues and gated, and they've already got places where they expect pedestrians to be. And it sounds like, so a question for applicant, so the current owner basically controls the entire site, but it's when it's subdivided, lot 7, lot 8, lot 6, some of those southeast corner lots could feasibly be owners or tenants.
Commissioner Mooney, I believe that the lots would actually be able to be sold and operated solely by new users, whatever they may be. There are currently, as the property owner mentioned, those 2 buildings to the north that are leased, and then you have BME fire trucks operating those other existing buildings. So.
Okay, follow up to Mr. Chair. So to Commissioner Danley's point then, a new owner in lot 6, 7, 8 down there in the southeast corner might encourage bicycle pedestrian arrival to work by their employees. And the city's going to basically make that easier by conditioning connectivity out there on Apple, but then they're going to be stuck when they enter this private road and not safely be able to get down to work in the southeast corner at the end of the 2,000-foot road. So explain to me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, as I stated earlier, Commissioner Mooney, I think it just comes down to a couple things, industrial in nature. Generally, if you go to more industrial areas to the Treasure Valley, walking and pedestrian access is just not something that's prioritized due to safety, but also due to the distinct areas that those places are located. Here we have, yeah, there are residential, neighborhoods to the north, but it's still going to be a trek from most areas of the city to get to this specific property for any user to work there. Lastly, you have the issue with potential future users coming forward, and depending on what their circumstances and how their site operates, where we put in a specific curb cut, because, if the sidewalk goes in, there's gonna have to be a curb cut for access. We're kind of guessing at this point where that's exactly going to be located, and it kind of ties down those future users to use that specific area. If, let's say they buy, a couple lots and use them together, those cuts might not work for them. So they'd have to just tear it out and then repave it again. So it just seems advantageous to us to just let the property owner in the future put that in as they see necessary with that design review application that would be required.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, John. Any other questions for anybody?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please, Chris.
Sorry, I should have asked staff.
Yeah.
The concept of a 10-foot dedicated section with extruded curb, allowing still 30 feet of two-directional travel. I didn't get your thoughts on that. I'm sorry, it put you on the spot a little bit, but I'm just curious if you have any general input on that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think that the most important thing would be to provide that additional connectivity as in line with the comprehensive plan. I think there's multiple ways to accomplish that. Whether it be a sidewalk on either side, one larger multi-use path is, I think, in the commission's purview here.
Thank you.
I guess real quick, Jesse, while we've got you, I'm just kind of curious about the parcel on the west end of this proposed subdivision between Apple and this proposed project. That's obviously a different property owner. Is there any, it looks like it takes access off this driveway right now. Is that the case currently? Is there any, I'm not quite sure what I'm asking. I'm just a little curious about that piece. It's undeveloped. It looks like railroad tracks leading to some sort of storage. Is that a railroad facility?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think that the applicant could probably speak a little bit better about the use of that parcel and how it connects with the current subdivision.
Excellent.
Yep.
Mr. Lundstrom, help us out.
Thank you. Yeah, Jesse is right. So this is currently owned by same property owner. It's vacant property that they're leaving open at this time for future development, but is not included in this application. Yeah, that's the most I can give you.
Okay, that's great. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions, gang? All right. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. If there's anybody that would like to testify on this item, we'll open up the public hearing. Anybody present tonight want to testify? No takers. We have one person online who want to testify online. Getting a no from staff. So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. At this point, then the applicant typically gets 5 minutes for rebuttal of anything stated during testimony. We didn't have any testimony, so you can certainly yield that time if you'd like.
Yeah, Commissioner Schaefer, thank you. We don't really have much else to say, but just wanted to note that the gate is existing. It is paved through that area right now. It is an operating site, and so currently they have a lack of pedestrian access as it is now. There are, folks that work there on site, and it's just not been brought up as a need at this time. So our thoughts are, we don't see this changing in the future, but who knows? So that's all I have to say.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindstrom. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring this back before the commission to render a decision. Again, this is item number 1, SUB 23-63.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Daly.
make a motion that item number 1, SUB 23-63, Fire Rail Subdivision located at 4600 South Apple Street, be approved with the terms and the conditions located in the staff report with the exception of site-specific recommendation number 2, with number 2 being reworded to state the following. The applicant shall install an extruded curb to define a 10-foot bidirectional travelway for walkers and bicyclists throughout the duration of the private road.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I have a motion with an amendment to condition number 2. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Seha. I have a second from Commissioner Seha. Chris, would you like to start us out with some discussion?
Sure thing. So I agree with the applicant in the sense of pedestrian activity. When you look around the site and you look specifically off-site of Apple, you're right. It is very industrial, and I don't anticipate there being a tremendous number of pedestrians. That being said, bicyclists is a different animal. And the distance that you cited of the 2,000-foot road and the 1,000, that's about a 6-minute bike ride to get to the Federal Way bike path. That's not that far. In a part of town, because of Micron and other applications, is growing in its residential presence. The specific claim that as these other lots that are to be subdivided come forward, that through design review, they could be required to put in curb, gutter, and sidewalk. That ship will have sailed if we don't address it tonight, because then there'll just be an island of sidewalk on one fronting parcel that isn't going to amount to anything. So the extruded curbing treatment and utilizing the existing 40 feet or the soon to be constructed 40 feet also financially for you is much cheaper than curb, gutter, sidewalk. And it's an effective tool. 40 feet, you already said yourself that you don't need that width. That the types of vehicles that you expect, no on-street parking. So we have an opportunity to satisfy the budgetary issues that you have and the concerns, but also make sure that we address in some instance here in a meaningful way that the future employers and employees who will be here at least have an opportunity to. And if we don't do this tonight, then that opportunity will be missed. So because of the citations mentioned in our comprehensive plan and in our code that are throughout the staff report, I recommend that we make this motion, that we approve your application, but with the change in the specifics of the site-specific number 2.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any other commentary, discussion? Okay. All right, let's go ahead then. We'll move right along to the vote. Again, we have a motion to approve item number 1 with the amendment to site-specific condition number 2 to install an extruded curb and a travel lane outside of a pedestrian and bicycle travel lane on the outside of that extruded curb within the proposed roadway. Again, the motion was by Commissioner Danley with a second by Commissioner Seha. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Danley,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
Seha.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. All right, we'll move along right along to item number 2, which is CVA 23-27, VY Architecture at 216 North Haynes Street. We have a variance to encroach into the front and rear yard setbacks and to exceed the allowed fence height in the front yard on 0.14 acres in an R2H zone. And we're going to hear from Jesse again from staff first.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the item before you is CBA 23-27. As you said, it's a variance to encroach into the front and rear yard setbacks and to exceed the allowed fence height in the front yard on 0.14 acres located at 216 Haynes Street in an R2H zone. The existing home was built in 1957 prior to the adoption of the zoning code. The orientation of the home is irregular in that the house fronts Haynes Street rather than Jefferson Street, which places the alley at the side yard rather than the rear. The orientation makes the buildable area quite narrow as shown on the screen, and the existing home is built within the front and rear setbacks. The planning team has found 3 of the 4 variance requests meet the criteria for hardship or exceptional circumstance. The variances to encroach into the front setback for the egress window well and rear setback for the steps present life and safety as well as access concerns or issues, excuse me. The egress window is required for a bedroom and the proposed steps are replacing the existing steps at the same distance from the property line with a slightly larger landing. The orientation of the home creates an exceptional circumstance to allow the fence to exceed the maximum height in the front yard. If the home were oriented to face Jefferson Street, the proposed fence would be allowed as proposed within this side yard setback and would be consistent with other homes in the neighborhood. Additionally, the applicant utilizes this area as their private open space, and they are also accounting for the clear vision triangle on the proposed plans. The final variance request is to allow for an in-ground hot tub in the front setback. The planning team finds that this request does not meet the criteria for hardship or exceptional circumstance. While the buildable area of the lot is narrow, the development code allows in-ground pools and hot tubs to occupy any rear or interior side yard area as outlined in green on the screen. While their proposed variances are impacted by the orientation of the home, the allowable area for the hot tub does not change with the home's orientation. The applicant has also cited the existing pergola as a hardship. However, it is an accessory structure that can be removed or relocated to accommodate the hot tub. The applicant also has options to reduce the size of the hot tub or relocate it within the allowable area. Finally, while other requests involve life and safety issues or allow for development that is characteristic of the neighborhood, this request does not. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of the variances for the egress window, rear stairs, and increase in fence height, but recommends denial of the variance request to allow for the in-ground hot tub in the front setback, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Hey, Scott.
Chair and Commissioners, my name is Scott Wybar. I live at 442 West Thatcher Street in Boise, 83702. So I think we have a different, another presentation.
There is a clicker right next to the
Yes.
podium.
Yeah, there you go. And Scott, will 10 minutes do it for you?
Yeah, it
Okay,
should be fine.
great, thanks.
Thank you. So I think Jesse did a pretty good job of explaining the situation, but I might just add a few details. So this is the existing home as seen from Haines Street. So this is the west side of the property. A few other images of the property. You can see that the house is really close to Haines. Like we mentioned, that is the long side of the lot. Normally, the houses in this neighborhood would face the short side, so Jefferson to the north. And on the rear, the house is, that's the bottom right photo, the house is about 5 feet from the rear property line, so also not within the 15-foot setback that would be applied in this case. These are some other images of the sort of the items in question. Staff has recommended approval of the fence, the landing, and the window well, so I won't really talk too much about those. But I will point out that existing pergola and the access from the house to the alley just there behind. So in that middle photo on top, you can see that the natural path to the alley is straight along the side of that pergola. The pergola itself is about 6 feet from the property line, but would not conform to the current zoning. A structure like that would need to be 9 feet from that rear property line. So removing the pergola would, in essence, mean you would have to rebuild it further away from that rear property line. So this is a similar diagram to what Jesse had, just pointing out that there's a very, very narrow strip where you can actually build anything on this lot. To give a little bit more context, originally part of the project scope was to increase the garage size to provide for some storage. You can barely get in and out of the car inside that garage. That plan was scrapped. Part of that, we are proposing a small storage shed to sort of make up for some of that storage space. But the big item is just to be able to physically make use of that rear yard, to remove the pergola. To keep the pergola is really the only option unless you want to push it to that inside that red, well, that yellow line there. And if you did that, there would be almost no buildable area left for that hot tub as shown in blue. And we've actually shown a few options. So basically, where could you potentially put that? Staff points out that, well, there's plenty of room within that green box that she had on her slide. But none of those places are actually very realistic at all. It's essentially anything that you put along towards the back would cut access to the alley. And any other position is basically going to put the hot tub directly against the pergola, the existing pergola. And that's something that we would really like to avoid, just because it would put it so close to basically an eating, living, gathering area where there's potential for a fall if someone steps back into the hot tub. So what we have tried to do is to provide a barrier between the gathering space and that hot tub. You can see there's sort of a landscaping element. So in order to do that, our feeling is that it is reasonable, given the orientation of this lot, the hardship that does exist, that hot tub encroach into that front yard. I guess it's front yard kind of in quotes. And that is 4 feet 8 inches into that front area. So the rear, so that rear yard, what has been historically used as a rear yard since 1958, is will have the new fence. It's a private space, and we don't see that there's anything that's not in compliance with the general East End neighborhood plan or the general comprehensive plan. So anyway, that diagram is just to show the difficulty of actually finding a place to fit that item, the hot tub. Here are a few images just to show the new fence, the vision triangle, and several images of what the intention is for that rear yard, keeping that existing pergola. So I think with that, I can just open it up to any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Scott. First, I got to check in see if we have anyone from the Neighborhood Association. Staff, do we know if Ms. Montoto is going to join us from the East End Neighborhood Association? Nope. Okay. Well, let's go ahead right along to questions then.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore, please.
So I think, Jesse, I think it was in your staff report, but can you confirm? So what was it? The north side street, if that was the front yard or the front yard setback, and then Haynes was the side yard, you still wouldn't be able to put the hot tub right there because it's a street side setback. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that is correct. That green area that was outlined in the packet, I can show on the screen here as well. Would be the only allowable area for that in-ground hot tub, regardless of the orientation of the home.
Mr. Chair.
Please, Jennifer.
And so if I understand correctly, that's not really altered by the alley side being the rear yard, because there's still that, 5-foot setback between where you're allowed to put the hot tub and the rear yard and the interior side yard, right?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the Development Code allows any in-ground hot tub or pool to be within 3 feet of a rear or side yard
Okay,
property line.
thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Blanchard.
Jesse, would we regulate the placement of an above ground, or this is just in ground we're talking about here?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the Development Code only regulates the in-ground.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Daly.
so I want to make sure just that the timeline of this sort of understood, Jesse. So this house was built, I think you said, I know you cited 1958. I thought I saw an earlier date. It was built in was it 53 or something like that. Do you remember?
That could be correct.
So the better part of 20 years, give or take, it was built and was like this. And then in the early 70s, we plopped down a zoning ordinance. And that zoning ordinance stated setback requirements that were pretty much applied to units all over this neighborhood sort of equally. Would that be a fair assessment?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I believe that the house was constructed in 1957 and
Okay.
the zoning code was in the early 60s, but yes, that's the same general.
Somewhere in that time,
timeline.
okay. But this being an end unit that had a different orientation, it's been this way. The orientation obviously hasn't changed since that entire time. We use the exceptional circumstance of the historic orientation to permit the fence and to permit the egress window. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's the recommendation in the staff report, correct?
Okay. If I recall my reading correctly, this is a basement room. Is that correct?
Yes, there's going to be a
Okay.
basement room added will require an egress window.
Does the basement run the whole length of the house or close to it, or is there another place for a bedroom? Or is that the place it has to be?
That's where it would have to be. Yeah, the basement is not under the entire house.
So it's only portion?
Yeah, and just on that one
Okay.
side of the house too.
Okay, that's fine. That clarifies. So you're gonna be adding a room with an egress, improving the stairs and changing the fence to a property that has historically oriented towards this direction since the late 50s.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moody?
So we talked about alternative locations and the applicant stated that those other locations are difficult. Jesse, can you talk us through that? Because one of the staff report recommendations is alternate locations or reduce the size of the tub. So let's talk about reduction in size and where you could put a tub.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners,
Jesse, maybe if you could put up the exhibit. Yes, thank you.
sure thing. So the green area on the screen is the allowable area of the tub. Currently, the hot tub is proposed as a 70 square foot tub with an apron. One option could be to reduce the size of that to fit into that area with the pergola. As the pergola is an accessory structure, there is an option to relocate that and accommodate both. There's also an option, as Commissioner Blanchard pointed out, to have an above ground hot tub, and that would not be an issue anywhere in this yard area.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Sean. Jesse, while we're on this slide and this subject, the pergola, Scott, the applicant, implied that it's non-conforming per code now. It's set too close to the property line. Is that correct? Is that is city in agreement with that statement?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I believe that the allowable setback for a pergola for the rear setback and under the code is 9 feet, and I think it's closer to 6 right now.
Okay. Okay. So we're on the same page there, Scott.
That's correct.
Okay, great. So then Jesse, and I'll follow up with the applicant in a second here, but the pergola structure, if it were to move, it has to be 9 feet from the west property line, which is the top of the page now, right? How about our separation from the right side of the page? Where can the pergola go if it moves? Is my question. To put you on the spot.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I believe the pergola could be up to the interior side setback, so I believe it could be that 5 foot on the,
Right side.
yes,
Okay. And 9 from the top side.
correct.
Okay. So thank you for that, Jesse. Now, Scott, your turn. No offense to the pergola construction and the pergola design. When I see the pergola, though, in the photographs, I don't see anything very magical about that. You know, it's a pipe post, shade structure. It seems to me, though, in your materials, you're pretty beholden to leaving it where it is currently. Is there any real story behind that? I mean, it seems like you really don't want to move that. I'm just kind of wanting to get a little background on that.
I think the reason why is because if we move it, if we take it down and build a new one, we have to move it. So it moves it even closer to the middle of the yard, taking up even more space that we could potentially use for the hot tub. So it's basically condensing everything even more.
Hmm.
So you can imagine has to move 4 feet further towards the bottom of the page, getting it even closer to the hot tub, which we're trying to avoid.
Right,
So,
right. I guess where I'm going with it is, it's like they both can move around, right? Like you've got a square for a pergola and a square for a hot tub. Have you explored different configurations of moving them both, you know?
yes, we can, we have done that. And I think that what you'll find is that between the house and the alley property line is that there is not enough space for those two items to coexist. It basically just puts one on top of the other and right next to the house and right next to the alley setback. And so it just changes this configuration the other direction. And you still have the issue where the hot tub is directly next to the gathering space. And it also makes it difficult to have access from the east side of the yard to the west side of the yard. So I feel like given the circumstances, the question is there a variance for the setbacks for the hot tub? It isn't, I mean, we can't really fit it in that space. So, and I think that staff has said, well, you can find a way, and we're trying to say that it is not there's not a practical solution to that. And we're already asking for you know, a variance for this difficult orientation.
Okay, great.
So, yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Thanks. Okay, any other questions? All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, so for the applicant, so you've moved the squares around. So what size hot tub does fit?
I mean, I mean, that's sort of a question where it could be like like a bathtub. It could be very small, but I think the question is there a valid reason to enforce these setbacks to, you know, should we shoehorn in like a bathtub size hot tub? Because we're already asking for a variance because of the non-conforming situation of the lot. So at that point, is it changing? We are basically just asking for an exception to that setback, which we don't believe is applied properly to this lot. So I don't know the answer to exactly what size would fit, but it would have to get smaller, and we would have to push it, I think, closer than the applicant would like to that pergola, just for sort of that safety concern that he's concerned with. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, one more, Scott, on the pergola.
Sure.
Have you investigated at all the footings, the design of the pergola at all? Because I noticed in the plans, you know, you're going to be replacing I believe it's concrete around the pergola currently, a concrete patio.
Yeah.
And now you're going in with permeable pavers. I'm just curious if you've done any investigations on the footings and the structural design of that pergola.
No, I mean, we haven't been able to see below the patio.
Okay.
The patio concrete.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, I'll check in one more time. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Scott.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. All right, and we'll open up public testimony. If you'd like to testify on this item, podium is free. No one is online, it looks like. One person, okay. Gotcha. Thank you, Crystal. That you had some background for me there. Thanks. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public testimony. Scott, this is typically a time for the applicant to rebut anything stated during public testimony. There was nothing stated. You can certainly yield your rebuttal time or make any final comments if you'd like. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission. Again, this is item number 2, CVA 23-27.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Daly.
Let's give this a shot.
Okay.
I make a motion that item number 2, CVA 23-27, request for variance, 4 different variances located at 216 North Haines Street, be approved with all 4 variances specifically being approved with the remainder terms and conditions found in the staff report. Hopefully I nailed that.
Second.
Okay, great. We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Danley with a second by Commissioner Squires. Chris, you want to kick us off on some discussion?
Sure. Okay, I think that the key to me on this is the exceptional circumstance element of the argument. The moment that this property was subject to zoning, it was non-conforming to basically a front yard setback. We know it's front yard setback. Our exhibits even demonstrate it, even though it's obviously an unusual orientation. But the code in its infancy essentially treated every lot the exact same. And the orientation of this definitely makes it an unusual and exceptional circumstance. So I then go to the question of how has it been treated historically? Well, I think, have evidence as well that over time, the history shows that this has been the front yard and that all of the traditional setback requirements have not been applied the same because of this historic orientation. The applicant is making an improvement by adding a room. That room could conceivably be re-rented. I think that's a good thing. The applicant is making the rear stairs safer. I think that's a good thing. And replacing a fence with a better one, including the sight lines at the alley. I think that's a good thing. So it's, again, already non-conforming by 10 feet. So I asked the question, where is the harm in a 4.5 foot this wide section of hot tub going into basically the backyard? Where is the public health, safety, and general welfare concern that we should have when applying a variance? I don't see that here. I think the applicant has made a valid case. I think that I don't see a deleterious use in the neighbors, to the neighbors. In fact, I think that this hot tub being underground would be quieter versus above ground. So if anything, there's a benefit there. So for the historic orientation and the exceptional circumstances that have been applied to this, I think that those things for me have been met and therefore made my recommendation to approve.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any other discussion or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Blanchard, please.
Just real quick, though, I will commend Jesse for her work on this. You know, we dropped the zoning code, or somebody else dropped the zoning code on there 40 or 50, 60 years ago, whatever it was. And then we asked the staff, you know, follow these guidelines. And you did a great job of following the guidelines, trying to make things work within those guidelines and all that. And so one of the reasons we have the flexibility that we have up here is to meet the conditions like Commissioner Danley outlined. But yeoman's job on your part, Jesse, for doing what you were asked to do on the project.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chris's. Totally agree with Commissioner Danley's statements and the motion. Commissioner Blanchard, also agree with you. Jesse, well done on this. I'll be honest, I've vacillated back and forth on this one as we reviewed our packets. It's an interesting situation. At the end of the day, the buildable area of this lot is laughable. And half of the house, for all intents and purposes, is within setbacks, right? So I agree with the motion. You know, having said that, you know, I think there are some things you could do, right? You can kind of push and pull, but at the end of the day, as Commissioner Danley stated, the area of the hot tub that you're putting into the setback is not any more permanent than the house is, right? So I agree that an in-ground hot tub in this condition is probably more beneficial than an above-ground hot tub. And like I said, it's certainly not any more permanent than the structure, right? Which is the primary purpose of the lot itself, right? The house. Other than that, I just wanted to comment to Scott, nice job on the site plan. The drawings were very clear. Nice job on your presentation as well. So we appreciate that. That makes our job easier. Okay. Again, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Danley and a second by Commissioner Squires. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Danley,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
Seha,
No.
6 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Okay. Thanks, guys. I assume we can just press on, team. We have one more item. Good? Okay. Up, last but not least tonight is item number 5, PUD 23-37, Rodney Evans and Partners at 7777 West Fairview Avenue. Conditional use permit for a residential plan development comprised of 18 townhome units and a church on 2.1 acres in a C2D zone. And then along with this application, we also have SUB 2361 McPherson Park subdivision at 7777 West Fairview Avenue. A preliminary plat for the residential subdivision comprised of 19 buildable and 6 common lots on 2.1 acres in the C2D zone. First, we're going to hear from Sabrina Mortensen with staff.
Right.
Hey, Sabrina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The item before you is a request for a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 18 townhome units and a church on 2.1 acres located at 7777 West Fairview Avenue in a C2D zone. A preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 19 buildable and 6 common lots is also included. The subject property is located at the southwestern corner of the intersection of Fairview Avenue and Owens Avenue and contains an existing religious institution. There is an existing bus stop located at the northeastern corner of the property with VRT routes 7A and 7B running along Fairview Avenue adjacent to the site. The applicant proposes to maintain the existing religious institution on the northern portion of the site with no modifications to the existing structure, parking area, or landscaping. The applicant proposes to divide the property to create an 18-unit townhome subdivision in the southern portion of the site. Vehicular access to the residential development would be provided by a private street that would enter the site from Owens Avenue. 14 of the proposed townhomes will be oriented to face the private drive, with rear yards facing the existing church to the north and the neighboring single-family homes to the south. The 4 remaining units will face Owens Avenue with rear-loaded garages that would be accessed from a common driveway. There is existing attached sidewalk along the northern portion of the site's frontages on Fairview Avenue and Owens Avenue, which the applicant proposes to maintain. As conditioned, the applicant will be required to install new detached sidewalk with street trees along all portions of the site's frontage on Owens Avenue, which doesn't already have attached sidewalk. Additionally, the applicant proposes to provide attached sidewalks along both sides of the private street, as well as a pedestrian connection to the adjacent property to the west, which was recently redeveloped with multifamily residential. Together, the 2 developments will provide a continuous pedestrian connection between Owens Avenue and Etheridge Lane. As detailed in your packets, the applicant requests multiple deviations from the dimensional standards of the C2 zone in order to accommodate the proposed development. However, the planning team finds the modifications to be supportable as they are necessary to accommodate townhome style development, and they will allow for the provision of common open spaces that serve the entire site. All perimeter setback requirements are met or exceeded, and the orientation of the proposed townhomes are compatible with the adjacent uses, including the existing single-family homes to the south. Each of the proposed townhomes will have 2 off-street parking spaces located within attached garages, with most utilizing a tandem parking arrangement. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Where you been, Ben? It's been like,
I know.
what, 2-3 months?
It has been, yeah.
Well, happy 2024 to you.
Yeah, happy 2024 to everyone as well. Welcome back.
Yeah.
So, Ben Semple, Rodney Evans and Partners, 1450 West Bannock Street, Boise 83702. Sabrina has really worked with myself and the applicant team. I think that you guys have seen this before on this property, or at least there was a submittal made. It was much more modern. The kind of entry drives were much different orientation. So I was brought onto the team, kind of looked at this again, really working with ACHD to find the access point that's appropriate and how to get as many units on here as the client could be able to develop, and while still being well under the density allowed in that C2 zone. We're in agreement with the conditions of approval and the staff report, as well as the ACHD staff report. It's nice to see that we can keep some of the existing sidewalk that's along Fairview just for sole purposes of sustainability. And then looking at some of the items from the comments from the agencies, I just want to confirm these are 30-foot height maximum to the eave. So while it does accommodate aerial access for fire, It won't be required for these. We have an on-site turnaround that fire has approved, and it also works for solid waste. We will be reorienting that solid waste enclosure a little bit to comply with their comment on that one. I know there's a couple street lights that get installed with the project as well. And all of the public access easement requirements, including straightening out that pathway to the south. We were just looking for a different, kind of a couple different ways to move pedestrians through that site, some attached sidewalk along the private street, and then more of a, I guess, passive recreation route. But what I want to do is make sure that that stays far enough from the southern property boundary. My client is very sensitive to the privacy. That was a lot of the conversation during the neighborhood meeting, as well as parking and traffic, which we do here on pretty much every project that's an infill redevelopment. There is a public street. Owens is a public street. There is some on-site or on-street parking that would remain viable along the frontage here. And while the church isn't technically part of this development, I mean, they are the owner of this property. There's a contingency sale on this project going through. We are in conversations with them about their parking lots. They have two. One's kind of a maintenance parking lot. The other is associated with their facility. Looking at, possibly shared parking arrangement of some kind to look at using it when they're not using it, not on service times or days for other guests potentially of this development. But these are single family fee simple townhome lots. All of them have 2-car parking, which exceeds current code. I know we're under the old code, but it does say, the old code did state, or the legacy code did state that tandem parking is allowable in single family residential situations. So, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think that the improvement to the site is really going to be a great improvement for this area. A lot of landscaping going in. I think we have got 57 trees or something being planted, detached sidewalks, and really look forward to having a high quality product go in here. So I'd stand for any questions you may have.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ben. First, we're going to check in with the neighborhood association. But please stay close. Do we have anybody from West Boise Neighborhood Association? Okay. Good thing you didn't go anywhere, because now we have questions.
Okay.
Okay. I'll start then. So Ben, you alluded to, Sabrina, could you pull up just the site plan just for reference? I think I know what's going on. I'm just a little curious, Ben. So you mentioned the church and the maintenance facility. Is the maintenance facility that little building? Yeah, right there.
Mr. Chair, yeah. So the existing church building fronts on Fairview there. Then there's a very large landscape buffer between their parking lot. It's got some really nice mature sycamores, and then a maintenance building. They have their dumpster back there. But that is all asphalt right now.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and then very minimally used. And I would say that once a giant field that they have to mow isn't there, they probably use it even less.
Yeah, right. Okay. But the church owns everything north of you.
Correct.
essentially. Okay,
Yes.
great. All right, thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mooney.
So we look at reference in the picture that we've got up right now. So the overhead power lines are why the detached sidewalks aren't conditioned. Is that accurate for staff?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, are you talking about the frontage on Fairview Avenue?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yes, the overhead power lines are a significant reason that wasn't suggested by staff with this application.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Please
So
do.
for staff, the ACHD report indicates that the picture we're looking at there, that will be 7 lanes. Is that the way I understand it in the CIP, ACHD 5-year work plan?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, I believe that's correct.
Is there anything we would normally condition for an applicant like this in the interim between now and that CIP project?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, if there were no existing street improvements, then most likely we would condition that, knowing that there's likely to be a larger project that comes in down the line. I would say typically no.
Mr. Chair, last question. How about the VRT stop?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, this was routed to VRT. They didn't request any modifications to what's existing on the site currently.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So that pedestrian connection from the adjacent parcel to the west, where does it go? Does it just connect Etheridge with Owens Avenue? Is that that's the
Okay.
intent?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, that's the intent, is to provide pedestrian connection between Owens Avenue and Etheridge Lane. It does also provide an alternative route for folks to get down to Florence Park further to the south.
Okay, gotcha. So there's a connection to Florence from at the end of Etheridge. It's kind of where it connects.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
I just
Commissioner
have one
Taylor?
quick question if I can. I'm having a heck of a time seeing if this is accurate or not. I'm seeing different, sort of on the plat disc maps and also on the images that you've described. I can't figure this out, so I need some help. I see that there is sidewalk that's going to be built by you, that in some instances looks like it comes to the back corner of the sort of near the first lot. So in the upper right of that image, I see it looks to me like the sidewalk terminates there. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Damley, that is what we had shown on here. And then in discussions with ACHD, they're making the developer replace both of those driveway approaches that are to the north of this between the end of the sidewalk you see there and where the attached sidewalk is on
The
Owens
maintenance
Street.
area.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so because we have to replace those drive aisles, we're going to just extend the sidewalk all the way across that stuff.
Okay,
to
that's
get
my
the
question.
driveway
So we're
entries.
going to connect all the way
Yes.
to Fairview.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mooney?
So the pedestrian easement and pedestrian cross access, east-west down there at the bottom, south end of the parcel, how did we get there? Was there the west parcel there that we're connecting to with this applicant, was that conditioned previously, or did we just luck into that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, I actually reviewed the application on the adjacent parcel as well. That was a condition of approval on their end too.
Excellent, thank you.
Ben, I see. Okay, Ben, got a couple houses to your south, correct?
Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct.
And you are, see the building on the east, we're right at the 15-foot setback. And then the building on the west, we're probably more like 40 feet to the property line, something like
Mr.
that.
Chair, it's about 34, 35 feet.
Okay.
It's close.
Okay, getting old, yeah, that's right. I didn't have these on. All right, so we're meeting the setbacks. The short side of the one building on the east is 15 feet from property line. Can you walk us through, I mean, you got a robust landscape plan in that buffer there. I don't know if we have that in the slideshow. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr.
Sweet.
Chair, so the home immediately to the south that's along Owens, fronts on Owens. So
Mhm.
their side setback is their north property line.
Gotcha.
And so the south would be the side property line for this. It could have been a little closer. We felt like because of the rest of the landscape buffer that's along the western portion of the southern boundary, that it made sense to push that further from the property line. Again, really trying to protect the privacy there, knowing that there are existing yards there that are being used. A lot of the tree locations are coordinated with what I've seen in the field there to try to fill some gaps. And then once you get to the home that's on the, I guess, south of the western corner of this property,
Mhm.
their backyard is the north property line. So that's why we pushed those townhomes further north. Those also have private yards in the backyards of them, as do the ones along the north side. So really that southern boundary was, the reason it's landscaped how it is it was meant to be, very passive and, kind of a walking trail only, not people hanging out in that space. Because we've got that northeast corner as the usable open space, really trying to keep activity, away from the residences to the south. We've also committed to not putting balconies that are going to be on the south side of those. Or if they're on the east or west, they're screened with a wall or set inside the architecture so that there aren't any views out of those upper levels to the residents to the south.
Okay, great. And maybe just, it looks like a pretty nice combination. You got some evergreens and some deciduous trees going throughout that whole stretch. Is
Yeah,
that right?
we've worked in some, we've got some class 1, 2, and 3 deciduous trees as well as some evergreens in there as well. A pretty large variety of those, and then shrubs and perennials. Try to get year-round interest as well.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Really
Thanks.
working within that tree selection guide as well to make sure that we're hitting some of the sustainability, low water use, drought tolerance as well.
Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Last call for questions. Okay, great.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
Ben.
you. Yep.
Thanks, Sabrina. Okay, we do have a few folks that signed up ahead of time here, so we'll start there. I have Mark Manning, maybe? Great. And then Victoria Purcell and Stephen Purcell. Okay. Come on up. You guys all have 3 minutes for your time. We'll have a
Oh, I
clock
wanna
going
make
up
sure.
here. If you can start with your name and address for the record.
Mark Manning, I'm 1311 Owen Street. I'm a few doors down from the construction project. I sent a letter out and it got kicked back. So I was wondering if I could resend it. And it actually had some attachments from some of my neighbors. We had a meeting about this and we all came to an agreement on 3 primary issues. And they were the parking. The configuration of the parking that we saw in the plans was like this, instead of like this. So there's going to be a car that's blocked always. They have 2 cars. It's going to be really hard to get 2 cars out of a garage early in the morning when people have to go to work. They're going to park in the street. They're going to use that extra space that's deep for storage. There's no extra space for tenants. The parking on Owen Street is already really tight. The Opahanga Apartments across the street has like 30 units. And about 2 or 3 times a year, we have to call about abandoned cars that are there for months. And as we're heading toward Fairview and trying to get off on Fairview, it just gets really difficult to get through that corridor there. So parking is one of the biggest issues. So we would rather have parking like this instead of deep parking because we don't see how that's going to work. I think that's just more likely to use that space for storage. So when they have guests, they have 2 cars there, there's going to be a lot of cars on Owen Street. There's going to be a lot of traffic coming in and out of Fairview. I don't know if you've ever been there, but that's really difficult to get off of Fairview and get back onto Owens and off Fairview in any direction. You're just a few hundred yards away from Cole Road. That was the first issue. That's the primary issue. The second issue is the flood. There's going to be a lot of rainwater. That 2-acre area is going to build up on a 1-inch rain, something like 60,000 gallons of water. That's according to the U.S. Geological Survey. 1 inch of rain on 2 acres is almost 60,000 gallons. That's enough to fill a small house from floor to ceiling. Where's the water going to go? All the rainwater, how's the water going to be managed? Where's the water going to go? It's going to run down the street. We already get flooding problems. We have flooding problems every year. And every year when it snows, we have ice problems as well. So there's no way there's not going to be
Time.
flooding problems unless there's some sort of robust swale or some sort of a dry well.
Mr. Manning, I'm sorry you're at your time for testimony. Can you wrap it up real quick for us?
Can I send you a list because there's just a few other items
why
I
don't
didn't
you-
get a chance to amend?
Why don't you check with staff here afterwards because this has to
Because
go
we
to
got,
city
it
council.
got kicked back, so several people
Sure.
mailed me there. Okay, I
Sure.
appreciate that. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. Okay, Victoria Purcell? Okay. And I'm assuming you're Mr. Purcell.
I am. Good evening.
Okay.
Stephen E. Purcell, 1405 North Owens Avenue. Oh, is it a little hard to hear the applicant explain what he was going to do? I'm the most affected property owner to the south. And we're concerned about privacy. I didn't get a staff report. Was there a staff report generated for this request? I didn't get a copy.
Mhm.
So I don't know how I'm supposed to, address what he's gonna do or not do, or what they're gonna let him do or not do. Anyway, privacy, we don't want a balcony facing our property. I think he said there wasn't. There wasn't gonna be a balcony or any windows. And, I think they agreed to replace my fence. I'm not sure. I mean, they're gonna plant trees and bushes. Those take a long time to grow up. Parking. Everybody here doesn't want people parking in front of their house. I mean, it's a public street. You can park where you want. But when the overflow comes, and just like Mark said, people parking on the street, pretty soon I got 7 children and a bunch of grandchildren that like to come and visit me, and it's inconvenient to have people parking in front of your house. Public street, I understand that. Anyway, the privacy, the parking. There's a bunch of gophers in that lot. Where are they gonna go? Hope they don't come into my yard. Barking dogs left at home that bark all the time. I guess that's it. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Okay. All right, that's it for the folks that signed up ahead of time. Yeah, if you want to testify, please come on up. We get 3 minutes, and you can start with your name and address.
Commissioners, I appreciate this. I had a parking problem and was a couple minutes late, so I didn't get a chance to sign up. So I appreciate the opportunity. Basically, I kind of like the project that's been proposed. It's a lot better than what could have gone there. Obviously, we're in love with that vacant lot, but I share the same issues in the parking. With the apartments across the street, and with the way these garages are configured, I think street parking is going to become a problem. And this is a forever thing. It's not something that's going to go away in 6 months or a year or whatever. If this is the time to make sure that there's adequate parking for the cars. I'll let Ben correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the stormwater has to be taken care of on site. I think that's what we were told at the neighborhood meeting. But there is a flooding problem in that neighborhood, which we certainly do not want to contribute to. So I'm concerned about the Purcells and their privacy, and also the inevitable blocking of their, free access to their home and to their property. And with that, thank you.
Right. Before you go, I don't believe we got your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Hal, H-A-L, Swenson. And my address is 1320 North Owen Street in Boise.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Swenson. Mm-hmm.
Our neighbors talked about it, we had a big meeting, and everyone agrees at 12, I don't think anybody.
Okay. I'm sorry,
Mr. Chair.
you've used your time and we're not on the record and we've already testified. So if you can definitely please check with staff about getting your letter in for the subdivision that has to go to city council. Yeah. If your wife would like to testify, this is the opportunity to do it right now. Okay. Sorry, we've got
Victoria Purcell, 1405 North Owen Street, Boise, Idaho. And what we want to say is that it's too many 18 units in that plot. And everybody understands that it would be nightmare with parking. And we want to develop that area, and like Mark said, 12 units. totally fine, but nobody wants to listen to us, and I understand everybody wants to get their profit. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Purcell. All right, I think that does it for everybody present. So let's check in. If there's anybody online that wants to testify on this item, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public testimony. Ben, if you want to come up for a rebuttal. I assume 5 minutes will be adequate, Ben?
Mr. Chair, yes, that will be.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I do want to make sure to reinforce, we do appreciate the comments that have come from the neighbors. I want to reinforce a couple things. While we are proposing tandem garages, all of the tandem garage units are 2-bedroom units. There are 3 other 3-bedroom units on this property that have a standard side-by-side garage on them. So we're sensitive about how those get parked. I also look at this and think about the new zoning code versus the legacy code, and that as single-family townhomes, they'd be required to have 1 off-street parking space if this came through under today's code. Density-wise, we're at just over 21 units an acre. This would allow up to 43.5 units an acre. Not that that is feasible. My clients actually looked at a multifamily structure here, and it just didn't work for them. And then we do have, and I know that it was talked about, it is a public street that allows for on-street parking, similar to the north end. People park where they can. When their friends come over, they park where they can. That's allowable. There are CC&Rs with this homeowners association that will make sure that people aren't parking where they're not supposed to park on the site, on the sidewalks, or blocking any of the street. There are a couple locations along this street that the fire department has indicated would allow for a couple on-street parking spots because of our 28-foot width, face to face, or sorry, back to back on that. Fairview is also a best-in-class transit route, and there's a bus stop at the corner there. There's also a lot of employment opportunities in this area, not a lot of housing options. There's some more coming online, but mostly single-family homes. Regarding stormwater, yeah, the stormwater facility is going to handle the 100-year storm. It is a subsurface infiltration gallery. We've had some geotech that has confirmed infiltration rates, so really not concerned about the on-site drainage. None of that will leave the property. So the on-street stuff, I mean, ACHD, we talked about this at the neighborhood meeting, like just trying to encourage ACHD to come out and do some maintenance on their inlets and everything a little more often. And then privacy, the one thing with the neighbor to the south, yeah, there will not be a balcony on the south side of that unit. We're definitely looking at planting more trees along there. And then regarding fencing, when the developer comes through to build the fencing that will be around the perimeter of this property, we've talked to him about coordinating with him to make sure that that gets replaced if it's in not great condition, because we don't want to have double fences there. And so that it has a consistent look in the neighborhood. That's for everybody involved, the new residents and the existing there. And then just one more thing on parking. We are still in conversations with the church about having a shared parking agreement that would allow for some overflow parking, especially for guests, which typically are going to come over at night. And the church has some minor activities during the night, but we'll make sure to just coordinate with them. They've allowed us to host the neighborhood meeting in their facility. They've been really great during the whole process. So I'm looking forward to continuing that with them. So I'd stand for any additional questions if you have any.
Okay, Ben, I think we're all set. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring these items back before the commission. Again, we have the PUD, which is PUD 2337. We also have the subdivision. And as a reminder, we are recommending to city council on the subdivision, and that is SUB 23-61. And we can take these up independent or together. It's up to you all.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Blanchard, please.
I move that we approve PUD 23-37, the conditional use permit for 18 townhome units on the 2.1 acres. And I move that we recommend approval of the subdivision 23-61 for the preliminary plat for that subdivision with all the conditions outlined in the staff report.
Commissioner Squires.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Squires, for the second. Commissioner Blanchard, you want to start us off with some discussion? Great, thank you.
I'm grateful to see some housing going in there, probably like everybody else is. I'm not entirely certain if the church is involved in that, but if they are, that's awesome if it was their land. And Ben, I think you've done a good job with the size of it, as you noted. Under the new zoning code, it could be much more dense and require even less parking. So this is really a pretty good compromise. And I appreciate the care that you've took with placement of windows and that kind of thing to maintain privacy for the neighbors, because that is an important thing, obviously. And I do just want to note to the homeowners too, that we are only the recommending body on the subdivision. So you will have a chance to go to the city council. This will go back before the city council for final approval. So if you missed the staff report, please talk to Sabrina, and that will be here and that will be noticed. And so you can stay in touch with staff, but yeah, that will be right back. So we've approved the one side of things here, but the actual building of the subdivision itself has to be approved by the city council. So you will have yet another bite at the apple at this. Okay.
Great, thank you, Chris. Good, okay. Commissioner Moore?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So I'll be in support of the motion. And I mean, as Chris mentioned, you know, the parking meets requirements. There's no parking reduction requested. The tandem parking is allowed for this product type. And I think there's been some thought as to which units are going to house that tandem parking. You know, there are fewer bedrooms in those units. So a little bit of kind of thought as to which ones are holding that tandem parking. You know, flooding as you kind of pointed out, you know, that is required to retain on site. So maybe that'll help a little bit with some of that flooding, or at least it won't make it worse. And then privacy, you know, with that unit closest to the property line on that south side. No balconies, you know, I don't really see any windows on that south side of the plans. There might be some up high that just aren't being shown. And yeah, I think, you know, overall, there's been a lot of thought and a lot of careful planning in locating some of that other block of units about 34 feet away from the property line. So some good distance to kind of keep some privacy. So overall, I support the motion.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Moore.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moody.
I'm also in support of the motion, and I know the neighbors are frustrated with notification. So just recognize we're sympathetic to that. The West Boise Neighborhood Association did get notified, and that's a good place to start, especially when the subdivision comes up to the city council, as Commissioner Blanchard mentioned. So hold your neighborhood association accountable as well for not notifying you. Secondly, thank you to staff for capturing that pedestrian connection. Well done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, I'll also be in support of the motion. Nice job, Ben, with the plans. I think the site plans look really good. To the neighbors, yes, as John stated, definitely check in with your neighborhood association. You can also find all the application materials and the staff report on the city website. So if you go there, you can find all the materials that were presented tonight on the city website. And as Commissioner Blanchard mentioned, you will have a chance again to see this at city council, so you can voice your concerns there again. But I think that overall the application looks really good. Again, Ben, nice job with landscape plan and paying attention to the privacy to the south. I think that's a big issue here. So kudos there. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and call the vote. Again, we have a motion to approve PUD 2337 and a recommendation to approve SUB 2361. The motion was by Commissioner Blanchard with a second by Commissioner Squires. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Yes.
Moore,
Aye.
Danley,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
Seha.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. With that, that ties up
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Daly. Yeah.
Before we adjourn, I just think it would be appropriate for us to take a moment and recognize that two of our commissioners up here will not be joining us next month. And we want to take a second and just thank you both, Commissioner Blanchard, Commissioner Squires, for your dedication to this city, for the thankless hours and hours and hours that you've put in, you know, all those weekends of reading hundreds and hundreds of pages of staff reports and all the details of code. We all know what that means up here, and we appreciate you for having done it and done it well. And thank you for your service.
Here,
Yeah.
here.
Yes, Commissioner Danley took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you both. It's been a pleasure serving with both of you. All the best moving forward. We hope to see you again here one of these days real soon. Any final words? Any final words? Okay, very good. We appreciate it. With that, we are adjourned and we'll see everybody next month. Thanks all.